The 2023 Division One FCS College Football Playoff has been set. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Slasher U. I'm your host, Christian Rao, here with my co-host, Steve Feck, and we're going to break down the bracket after Selection Sunday has broke down the teams in their rightful order. Steve, first and foremost, we saw a few upsets. We saw a few surprises in here and some not so much of a surprise. What was your initial thoughts before we really break down the matchups of the FCS College Playoff bracket?
Well, I think overall, I think that the committee got it right. I mean, the opening round games get tricky because they really try to keep it as regional matchups so that teams don't have to travel as far. I think the only team that kind of got the short end of the stick with that was probably Idaho because they've got a pretty I think the longest of the trips in the opening round. I personally would have put Montana State at number 3 as opposed to North Dakota State. But I mean, I think overall, I think they did a pretty good job. The teams that were left out uh, basically paid the price for not scheduling better, for their non-conference games. So I think overall, I mean, I was pretty happy. I mean, there was a couple of surprises here and there, but overall, I was very happy.
We did have one thing that happened with the FCS that came down to a legit coin flip, if you will. And that left UT Martin out of the entire college football playoff scenario. That is one thing that I wish that we would have found them sneak in. They were a bubble team as well, but SEMO got the coin flip. They won it. It was heads. And UT Martin gets to share the title of the conference, but doesn't get to participate in the college football playoff here for the FCS. What do you think about that? Pretty surprising. I mean, all coaches agreed on the coin flip, so this isn't something new, but I don't think they expected it to come down to that, Steve.
No, I think UT Martin thought that they had a strength of schedule advantage where they would still come in as an at-large bid. I think the fact that 5 teams came in out of the Colonial was a bit of a surprise, and that certainly doomed UT Martin's chance. But I mean, it's with all of the analytics, and especially with the FCS, because they have 2 different rankings, one based on a more analytical approach and one based on a coach's poll. You really couldn't come up with something better than a coin flip. That's unfortunate, for UT Martin, but only the NCAA. So.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, maybe they'll think about it later on. It was the coaches that made that decision in the conference, so it's not like it's anything that they didn't vote for. Let's look at the 8 teams that are going to receive a bye as before we get into this week's matchups, which we will be previewing individually on our Slasher U page in the middle of the week. You will have those previews up, so be ready for those ones. But let's start with the top 8 here that the committee decided on. South Dakota State gets the number 1 seed, followed by Sacramento State at number 2, North Dakota State getting the 3 seed, and Montana State at 4. Steve, what do you think about that top 4?
Well, again, I think North Dakota State was 3 based on what they did more last year. You see that in a lot of college polling that you get a lot of extra credit. Montana State had just a terrific second half of the season. And they beat, some teams that are in this tournament. They beat teams that perhaps people thought they shouldn't. So from that standpoint, I mean, I would have gone, like I said earlier, Montana State 3, North Dakota State 4. But I mean, those are the top 4 teams in the country. I think that's fair to say. Based on the other sheets we'll talk about here, I think there would be one team, Holy Cross, that I might have put in the 4. But really, I think 1 through 4, they were the best teams from some of the best conferences all season long. So that's good. These, those 4 teams are going to be guaranteed at least 2 home games as long as they keep winning. So
yeah, absolutely. All right, rounding out the rest of the bye weeks, the 4 through 8. I'm sorry, the 5 through 8 seed. William and Mary getting the 5 seed. Really cool for Coach London and the team in Williamsburg there. Number 6 going to Sanford, Incarnate Ward, number 7. And like you said, we talked about earlier, Holy Cross getting that final bye spot at the 8 seed. Do you believe that Holy Cross should be in that top 4, Steve?
I think of all of the teams that weren't there, I think they were the one team that had a legitimate statistical case for being in that top 4. I think Montana State finishing so strong, I think that kind of eliminated any of those other teams being able up there. William and Mary, I mean, that one surprised me a little bit, but any of those four teams there, you you you, you might as well flip a coin if they were playing each other, honestly, because that's how evenly matched they are. Incarnate Word just keeps, the tradition of San Antonio football. I mean, it just keeps going from there.
Lots of scoring there too. Lots of scoring.
Yeah, well, yeah, I think all of these teams, Holy Cross is probably known more for its defense than its offense, but all of these teams are going to be able to put up points. So it'll be a tough challenge whoever actually has to come in and play any of these teams in the second round.
All right, let's look into the first round matchups. We're going to get just a little bit of your thoughts on this because we're going to dive deep into a preview for each individual game here later on Slasher U during the week. Facing the winner will face South Dakota State, number 1 seed. That's St. Francis out of PA in Delaware. Delaware, just like we mentioned before, is one of 5 teams from the Colonial heading into that one. Fordham will take on New Hampshire, another Colonial one there, and the winner of that will take on Holy Cross. SEMO, the winner of the coin flip, will go on the road to Montana. The winner of that one will take on North Dakota State. And Idaho, as you mentioned earlier, has the longest road trip in the first round. They're going to take on Southeastern Louisiana. There's your first 4 matchups of the 8 of the week, Steve. What really pops out to you in those 4?
I actually do think that there's going to be some road teams that are going to come out of it. I think St. Francis and Fordham, just based on their high octane offenses, I think they are just going to prove to be too much. I mean, St. Francis is playing Delaware. That's a tough matchup. Delaware has the number 1 pass defense in FCS, but I do think that St. Francis is just going to wear them down, and I think that they're going to pull a road upset. I think Fordham may have the best quarterback at the FCS level, so I can see them winning their game. And I think Idaho is going to also, despite having the extra long trip, I think Idaho is also going to win on the road. I think everything else will be chalk.
All right, rounding out the rest of the matchups this week, we got Gardner Webb taking on Eastern Kentucky. The winner of that one will take on William and Mary. North Dakota taking on Weber State. That should be a really good game. Winner of that one taking on Montana State. That might be the game of the week for me. Elon versus Furman. That one should be good. Winner taking on Incarnate Ward. And then the winner of this one will take on Sacramento State. That's Davidson versus Richmond. Another good game right there. These matchups seem a little more enticing, Steve. All these will be on the first round matchups this Saturday. But what are your thoughts on these last 4 games?
Well, again, I think it's going to be the home team winning, except for Idaho. I think Idaho. I think they have a chance to beat. What is it? Southeast Louisiana, correct? That's who they're playing, if I'm not mistaken. So I really like Idaho. Idaho's had some very, very big wins in a tough conference, the Big Sky. So I think they're the only team that's going to win on the road. It should be relative chalk the rest of the way, I would say.
All right. Well, give us your thoughts about the prediction. What do you think about the bracket? Was your team left out? What do you feel about that? Or do you think the committee did a good job? And what are your predictions on these first round matchups? Leave us a comment below. And then while you're there, go ahead and give us a like and maybe subscribe while you're at it too. And thank you for watching SlasherU.